Hey, this is Ramon, Channels Alpha 4, and this is a follow-up to my Jordan Peterson video critiquing and defending his positions. And this is called Where Jordan Peterson is Wrong, Revisited, a review for 12 Rules for Life. So a few months ago, I made a video critiquing Jordan Peterson's bellicose approach at that time, explaining how his all or nothing, you either agree with me or your postmodernist neo-Marxist approach was overgeneral and came off a bit paranoid. Too easy for the far left and alt-left to caricature. As I had my revelation about him, I made that video off the cuff, and it showed. So this one has a script that I wrote last night, around 4 in the morning. But I posted that video anyway, with the intent of doing an immediate follow-up that was more refined and better researched. Unfortunately, by the time I got around to filming it, Dr. Peterson had released his book 12 Rules for Life and had become too hot of a commodity to convey anything not already being said, as the infamous Cathy Newman interview had just occurred. My intent in making that initial video was to answer his challenge to find where, if at all, if anywhere, he was wrong. So I did. It took me a long time to find any flaw with anything that he said. And it finally hit me that it was his approach and negative bias to postmodernism and feminism, collegiate women's studies, that was the problem. He was painting with too broad a brush when what he needed was a scalpel. Yes, I mix metaphors. Get over it. Then I read his book, 12 Rules for Life. And now I finally have something new and relevant to say. That is not being said by 1,000 other people already. Now, just to be clear, when I say I read, I mean I listened to. About it on Audible. To begin, let me tell you how I came across Jordan Peterson in the first place. It was not from his infamous Bill 16 video, nor from his cool-headed rational reaction to unreasonable protesters video. Actually, about a month before Jordan Peterson rose in infamy, I had a client who suffered from depression and stress-induced panic attacks. So I was pursuing mental health videos on YouTube, and I came across Jordan B Peterson. It was a clip of one of his classroom lectures. It was helpful, it was interesting, but most of all, it was forgettable. But after just watching one clip of him, that stupid algorithm kept putting him in my recommended feed. I'd delete them, I'd see his 2 shooting star moments, and I'd hit that little X. Then I'd put not interested as the reason why. But then my client had another episode while in the middle of a lift. For clarification, I'm a personal trainer. And while talking him down from his adrenaline-induced panic attack, in his rambling, he, a male, accused me of being sexist because I referred to my friend as female and I called her a bad chick, something she called herself and was proud of. We, her and I, often called each other bitches, dudes, and bros. He did not like this, and I was at a loss. I couldn't think of a good response, so I got angry. I was insulted. How dare this individual judge my consensual relationship with a lifelong friend? In his explaining why I was wrong, he parroted all the ideology Dr. Peterson warns about. That there is no gender, that men and women are objectively equal, biologically speaking, that data is just a social construct, that there are no facts, and truth is relative, that anyone can do anything as long as they believe. I answered back with, if you understand that physics say that there is more empty space in that wall than actual matter, then why don't you just walk through it? Go ahead, if you can do anything you want, if nothing is impossible, then just walk through that wall right now. He didn't like that. He left in a huff. I was desperate. I looked up mental articles again. I had gotten angry with one of my clients. A client who suffered from depression and major panic attacks. This wasn't good. And late that night, after having no luck with Google, I opened up YouTube, and there was Jordan's face, again. During one of his chubbier phases, he had some goatee stubble and a yellow shirt. I don't know why I clicked on that video, but I did. He talked about exactly what I had gone through with my client. So I clicked on another. No, it was this video that covered exactly what I'd been dealing with. And so it went on, video after video, greater and greater realization and greater synchronicity with what I had been going through with my client. By the time I made my video titled, Where Jordan Peterson is Wrong, I had watched all of his Maps of Meaning lectures and his biblical lecture series that he had posted up to that point. I had even subscribed to his channel. I was hooked. He was saying things that I myself had said a million times before. Stuff that as a philosophy tutor back in college, I had spoken myself. Back then, I was 24. But something in his approach bothered me now. I couldn't put my finger on it. See, before I went to college, when I was between 18 and 22, I had an extended lost year of sorts. At that time, I self-identified as a deconstructionist. During those earlier years of my devouring Nietzsche, Sartre, Hegel, and Marx, I even wrote for an underground feminist zine and lived on the beach with a feminist poet. So I knew well the ideology he was lambasting. Yet something in his critique rang untrue. But again, I just couldn't put my finger on it. Here was my critique of Jordan Peterson back in January of 2018. Going off of his last two videos up to that point, which was his advice to junior high students and his The Disability Bureaucracy Wants Your Soul videos. Basically, that they were too reactionary and slightly overstated. That his refusal to be boxed in or defined made him come across as a bit childish, like a teenager who refuses to be labeled. That his diagnosis that the humanities and women's studies were impossibly corrupted was too much of an overgeneralization, and very much so an oversimplification of the actual problem. As good has and is still coming out of those programs. He had gone too far in his rhetoric. So how accurate was my analysis at that time? And has it changed after reading 12 Rules for Life? Well, I still say Jordan Peterson's diagnosis of the social problem is correct, but his solution to get rid of gender studies, women's studies, and put universities out of business is too extreme. I still think that a more political, viable solution is reform in those fields of study, in the form of a massive overhaul of their approach and attitude toward masculinity, an increase in the academic and hiring standards of those departments, and a requirement that all professors be published and those works be reviewed by their peers in order to keep their jobs. Also, I still am not a Canadian, nor am I a collegiate student, and still, I am just a guy with an opinion and a smartphone. But my presentation wasn't perfect. I did say a line backwards. I meant to say, in the current political environment, we can't see the trees from the forest fire. And yes, I meant to say impossibly corrupted, not impossibly wrong when referring to those academic departments and fields of study. And when I was speaking of the positive advancements to come out of feminist studies, I overgeneralized and chose the wrong era of female authors to defend the positive aspects of the feminist movement. I meant to mention female authors such as Sappho, Sylvia Warner, and Elizabeth Gaskell, among others. But instead, I spoke of Gothic and Victorian literature. But that's just because, deep down in my heart, I'm still a metal-loving goth who thinks Dracula, Carmilla, and Frankenstein are the best novels ever. But, for all my critiques, Jordan Peterson has changed his tone since then. Some have called this change the tale of two Petersons. He has one tone for his lectures, another much more cool, collected, and self-controlled for his interviews. Peterson has also begun to appeal more to ex-Muslims and to women in his latest lectures and interviews. Other YouTubers have noted this too, So I am not the only one noticing this tonal shift. And, in all honesty, I still don't want to ride his coattails or his wave of popularity, like so many are doing right now, if for no other reason than the fact that he might, as of yet, crash and burn. Don't get me wrong, he's a great guy, but no one is perfect. I hope he makes it through all of this attention, without a bad slip of the tongue or a poor choice of action. Yet some of his flaws remain barriers to hearing his message, the same message he puts forth in his book. Barriers like his fanboys. For just one example, one anecdote, many of his fanboys just saw the title of my previous video and went to defend him in my comments without realizing that my video was a defense of Jordan Peterson. They simply attacked the title. I had to start screening my comments because I dared to question their hero. Yet, I make videos on the Quran where everyone in the comments is peaceful. Many of his fans seem to think Professor Peterson can't handle some mild criticism. That's not good. That's how a man, even a reluctant one, even a great man, gets put in the role of dictator or tyrant. Yet another barrier to hearing his message in his book is that Peterson is still too hot of a subject on his own for most people to separate his ideas from his cult of personality. Another, and maybe this is the most fatal barrier to hearing what he's actually saying, is the fact that he's still just human, and that eventually he will mess up, or a phantom skeleton from his past may yet shake loose, and then all the good work that he's done may just fade away. And that holds more people away from reading his book than anything else, because his book is the best-selling book across Amazon in multiple countries. The thing that hurts him the most is the fact that everyone's looking for his fatal flaw. Not just me. Not just the people that he's asked to look for it. Everyone is. And because they're waiting for that fall, and because they see something behind his message that may not be there, they're not willing to listen to his book. Even if they read it, even if they buy the audiobook, they're not willing to hear it, and they're not willing to listen. Instead, they're putting their own interpretation and spin on his words. But for all that, 12 Rules for Life did answer all of my latent questions I had about his work and about his personal philosophy. And his shotgun approach to philosophy and the giving of real examples means that sooner or later, his critique, his advice will land on you. But for the majority of time, it will just talk about everyone in general, different specifics. And it did eventually hit me too. And it burned when he covered my flaws in my personality. Yet it felt good when he landed on the flaws in others that I had observed but had yet to articulate. His book is cathartic in that way. And in that vein, Jordan Peterson's best defense of himself and his views is his book, 12 Rules for Life. It answered all the questions I had about his personal philosophy. All those questions that were dangling in my brain since I first came across him 2 or 3 years ago. It's funny that the guy who was anti-self-help books in his first few lectures is now a successful self-help author. 12 Rules for Life is a motivational book at the end of the day. But it is also a defense of all of Jordan Peterson's publicly expressed ideas and claims that he has made up to this point. When I'm filming this video, he is not alt-right. He doesn't hate gays, nor does he hate trans people, nor is he transphobic. But he might be teetering on the edge of Christianity, though he may try to deny that, depending on the day and the interview. And he does hate postmodernism. So read his book. It is edifying and enjoyable. Peace, like, and subscribe. Comment down below. Peace. Talk to y'all later.